Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at By Stealth and See, which is a 2020 game by Verssen Games and designed by David Thompson and Nicola Saggini. In this game, you control teams of Italian frogmen who are riding human torpedoes into Allied harbors in Alexandria, Algiers, and Gibraltar. And your mission is to try to sink Allied shipping. You have to face searchlights and patrol boats and mortars and torpedo nets, and all kinds of things could go wrong because, as we find out, our technology is not the best. So let's jump in and take a look at the components of this game and offer some initial impressions. So this game is, first of all, it's a big game and it's a heavy game because we have 3 mounted map boards in this. I just love the artwork on this. I mean, the idea that you've got these frogmen riding torpedoes into battle, trying to sink ships, just sounds like one of the most fantastic and insanely crazy ideas I've ever heard of. And I think this picture captures it very, very well. Let's flip this over, however, and take a look at the back side and take a look just at kind of some of these initial initial ratings of the game here. Game scale is tactical, so you control 3 different teams of these frogmen riding these human torpedoes. So you're going to have 3 of these machines basically that you're taking into harbor. So it's a very tactical level feel to it. Each counter here that we can see is an individual ship, and each of the Italian kind of human manned torpedoes represents a team of 2 frogmen riding 1 torpedo. Now, it says players is 1 to 3. This is designed, I think, as a solitaire game. You could play this where one player takes the 3 torpedoes, one player takes 2, another player takes 1. If you have 3 players, you could each take 1. But I don't think it's so much designed. There's not a cooperative element designed into it. It's just that each player could control 1 of the manned torpedoes. So I have a sense that because of the way things can go badly with this, the best way to play this is going to be as a solitaire game. Now, it says time to play is 30 minutes, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go into the game. But to play 1 mission would be 30 minutes. There's some campaign options that we'll talk a little bit about as we get into the rulebook that I think are interesting as well. Complexity rating says low. I think that's totally on the mark. If I had to give this a number from 1 to 9, I would say this is a 2 for complexity. I've read through the rulebook. It took me about an hour. It's very clear, and it's a very easy sequence in terms of learning how to play. So very simple game. I could see this actually being in itself a pretty good gateway game. I mean, I have to play it first, but it strikes me as if you're new to wargaming that this might be a nice place to start, just because it's not a very complex set of rules, and the sequence of play is relatively straightforward, and it's pretty easy with not a ton of kind of fiddly bits attached to it. So probably a good place for someone to start if they are digging into war games. So let's jump in and take a look at our components. We've got 2 books. This one here on the right is the mission guide, and this here is the rule book. Let's start by taking a look at the rule book. Now, this is glossy paper, and again, some good artwork on the back. It is 30 pages, including the back cover, but don't let that scare you because the print is really large. There's just not a lot of words on each page, and I'll show some close-ups again as we go through this. Everything is clearly articulated, so it tells you exactly what all the components are. A lot of artwork in here and graphics to kind of help you learn how to play. I like this as well from a rulebook standpoint because it has you start by setting up the game, and then it walks you through the sequence of play. So you could almost set up this first scenario, which is mission number 1, kind of read the rules and play through it as you're learning. So it's pretty easy in terms of kind of figuring out what to do. And again, this is 2 pages, right? But there's just not a lot of words here, a lot of graphics, and the text, the font size is really big. So we have section 1, which is kind of an overview to playing the game. And then the sequence of play is relatively straightforward. But I think seeing the sequence of play might help understand if this is a game for you, because there's not a lot to it. So I think we can walk through it pretty quickly. This forwarding position phase is kind of basically the position from which you start the mission and the conditions under which it starts. Then you have this fault check phase, which is basically The right way to put it is these machines didn't work very well, okay? They just kind of broke a lot, so stuff's going to be breaking all the time, and you got to kind of fix it. So not only do you have to kind of carry out the mission, you have to kind of fix the pieces that are going wrong as you're going along. I mean, it's got kind of, I hate to use the word jalopy for something like this, but these things just don't seem like they were very good. Now, we'll talk about in the campaign game, and we'll talk about the technology element, because the technology element advances as the game goes on. And so they're going to get better as the game goes on. Now, I don't know how good they get. I get a sense they were still kind of always breaking to some degree. The next phase is kind of where stuff happens. This is your SLC phase, and SLC is the acronym for these manned torpedoes in Italian. So the game book refers to them as SLCs, and we'll refer to them that way going forward as well. This is basically all of the actions you can take with your manned torpedo. So you can kind of move around and do all kinds of different things and detach the torpedo and attach it to the ship that you're trying to destroy. Then once you've taken actions as the manned torpedoes or the SLCs, then we get into the harbor defense phase. So there's a number of systems like searchlights and patrol boats and mortars and torpedo nets and stuff like that that are going to be trying to stop your torpedo, to stop your SLCs. And so this is basically their turn to act. So you go, then they go. And these are all the rules for how you do this. It uses a really neat alert system to kind of manipulate that. And that's it. So, you have this starting situation, you fix the stuff stuff's going to break, and then you can try to fix it during your part of the turn, or move, or try to attack and try to sink a ship and things like that. Then the defenses are going to go. Then there's a quick cleanup phase, and you go back to the beginning. So turns are really simple. There's really only kind of 3 parts to each turn. And then after a while, if you go through a certain number of turns, then the game is over. Now, this is the thing I think that's really cool about this game as well. You can play, and this section here is called campaigns. You can play an individual mission, and there's 9 in the game. We'll take a look at that in a moment. You can also play a historic campaign, which basically is each one of these 9 missions. This is highly grounded in history, which is really cool. So you can see even here, and we'll take a look at the cards. These are the names of the actual Italian frogmen that participated in these missions. And so the historic campaign sets up everything as if it were on those real conditions. And then you play through it. And the campaign is, can you do as well as the Italian frogmen did in real life? And you run through this sequence of 9 different missions that they attempted to carry out in World War II. Now, I didn't mention this yet, but this is the next game going to come up in our Submarine Monday series. And what we're going to do for that is not the historic campaign, but a custom campaign. And a custom campaign, basically, everybody starts out with no skills, and the defenses level up, the harbor defenses level up depending on how well you do, and then depending on how well your frogmen do, they level up. And I think this custom campaign is going to add another level of agency over the actual missions. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and that I think looks like the way we're going to go for our Submarine Mondays. And here you can see the technology advancement element of it. And basically this is talking about the different rules you use to manage the technology improvements of both your SLCs and your frogmen in terms of advancing their skills, and then the harbor defense as well, because the harbor defense is going to level up and they're going to get more alert and more paranoid, basically, depending on the better you do, the stronger the defenses are going to get. And this is kind of basically in here we can see a ranking for how those work. So really excited for this custom campaigns thing. That's kind of a role-playing, skill advancement type of element to it, which looks like it's going to be really fun. Now this is the mission guide that has the 9 missions in them. And basically each one follows the same kind of format. There's a couple of pages here of introductory information, and it gives an overview which tells you the actual history of the particular mission, which is really fun to read because you see what happened, how it was a success or was it a failure, and then it gives you the particular setups of this historical components. For the custom campaign, you don't use some of these because basically your frogmen aren't the ones that you're using from real life. You're bringing your frogmen forward from previous missions and things like that. And then it gives you the setup for the particular harbor that you're using, and there's 3 of these in the game, as we'll see, and the setup for your different cards and what sort of technology the different SLCs will have, and then what sort of level the harbor defenses are at. So it gives you all the conditions like that, and this basically goes through 1 through 9. So these are the 9 missions that are included with the game here, and this kind of goes on. This, again, is glossy paper, takes you all the way to the end, which is, can't see the pages here. Looks like 36, 38, about 40 pages or so for that. So let's jump in now and take a look at some of the components here. These are the cards for the, and I'll show a close up on these two, even though they're kind of big here. These are the cards for the actual SLCs. And in every mission, you have 3 of them. And actually, the way you lose that custom campaign is if you don't have enough frogmen crews to man these 3 SLCs. It's game over in that case if basically you get enough killed and captured that you don't have enough left to man them. And we'll take a look at those cards as we go forward. But we can see this is the kind of the skill level of the frogmen, and this is the different, you're going to put on basically surge markers here that kind of a way that kind of describes, if you would, the quality of the different SLCs. So each one, this is kind of where you keep track of that, and then the operators go there. So this is basically kind of a status card, if you would, for that. Here is our turn sequence reference, and again, basically very simple. Fault check, SLC phase, harbor defense phase, cleanup phase, and then go back. And the forward positioning phase is that startup phase that only happens at the beginning of the game. So it's 1, 2, 3, cleanup, go. Really simple kind of thing. And here's the fault effect. So this is when something breaks, what it means for your SLCs. And really, again, it sounds like stuff just breaks all the time in this game. Now, this is I kind of wish this came as sheets of paper. I think the idea is that you photocopy this. This is the historic campaign after action report. So you kind of take notes as to what you did, but it's on kind of glossy cards. So you wouldn't want to write on this, right? I imagine you can download them from their site and print them out, which is fine. I mean, it's a minor little thing here. And likewise, another one of these, the partner to that, is this custom campaign operator roster, which does the same thing, except you kind of fill in the information based on how your custom campaign has gone. There's a little more record keeping for that one. Here is, I think this is a great, this looks really helpful. This is the SLC action reference. So this is basically all of the different actions that you can take with your SLCs. So detach the warhead, repair, recover, evade the net surface, dive, change direction, full move, scuttle your SLC, escape kind of things. All the different things that you can do as you're trying to carry out your mission. And here is the custom campaign. Oh, okay, look at this. I actually didn't see this. This is the custom campaign after action report. So this has the results of the mission in the particular custom campaign. This here is the operator roster. Sorry, I might have explained that poorly, where you keep track of your different crews and their status, whether they've been killed and what experience they've gained and things like that. So very cool. I'm definitely looking forward to a custom campaign with this. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. There are 3 counter sheets. These are big. I'm going to guess these are close to an inch in size. I'm kind of estimating here. Very colorful. They are double-sided, and for the SLCs you kind of need that, and for the patrol craft you need that because that represents different statuses of the patrol craft. Most of the times when you're placing ships, you're placing them this face upside here. And most of these, as we see, and I'll show close-ups, are the actual targets that you're trying to hit. So this counter sheet is all targets. These up here are kind of represent the skill level of the pilots for those different types of skills they can have. And this is all ships. And this one, the top 2/3 is ships. Then here's the 3 counters for your SLCs. And then these are the potential 7 counters. Depending upon the harbor defense level, there can be more patrol craft active in the harbor, and there can be as many as 7 at the highest levels of the defense systems there. So pretty cool. And these are all nice and already pre-curved, so you don't need your counter clipper to get them all set up. Just punch and go, and you are ready to play. Now, not the last things here. We have the 3 mounted boards. And again, these are tricky to show on this camera, so I'm going to show an overhead shot that I took before of a camera shot of it. But you get 3 of them. And basically the mission can happen in any one of 3 different places. This that we're looking at here, as we can see in this bottom left corner, is the one for Alexandria. On the right-hand side of these, we have the mission defense, the harbor defense systems, and each one is subtly different. And one of the interesting parts of it is that, especially in the campaign game, this is an outer breakwater, and this is basically getting into the harbor where the SLCs have to go. And if you get in there, inside this harbor as part of the campaign game, you actually get a skill level up. So getting past the torpedo net is considered an achievement in and of itself. But these are, I love the color of these. I think the artwork's just really evocative. And then the bottom here, we can see our time record tracker. So you've got to start basically at midnight, and you've got to finish before the sun comes up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So this is the one for Alexandria, and they're similar. There's Gibraltar, and then there's Algiers, and I'm not going to show those because basically they're the same type of thing. But these are heavy mounted maps, real high quality, so they feel really good, which is, of course, they account in and of themselves probably for a good inch or so of the box thickness. Lots of cards. Let's take a look at those. So we have a lot of markers. You're putting these on the SLCs to kind of keep track of the different statuses and kind of the different status conditions of the SLCs. We have 5 dice. One is three-sided, has 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 3s when you're selecting one of the particular SLCs. And then you use dice a lot for skill checks. When you have something goes wrong and you have to repair it, or when you're trying to move. The movement mechanism system basically is you can kind of take a risky move, in which case you have to roll a die to be successful, or you can kind of use all of your action points and make sure you accomplish it. So I think I mentioned that the SLCs break down a lot. And as you can see by the size, this is called the faults deck. These are all the different things that can go wrong with these torpedoes. I mean, it sounds like this was kind of flying by the seat of your pants kind of stuff. It reminds me, for whatever reason, almost of like the Wright brothers. It's like, can this thing work? Who knows? Let's go and let's try it. The faults here, I'll show a few of them. I'll show some close-ups. But depending upon the technology level, so this is the ballast fuel tank, and you can improve, in the campaign game, you can improve the technology level of your SLCs by getting victory points in your missions. So one of the things that you're trying to do in that custom campaign game is to increase the quality of your gear so it doesn't break down as much. But this is, SLC ballast tank fault. And we got battery fault, so the battery's gone out. The breathing gear fault, so your scuba gear is gone bad. Transmission on the SLC's broken, and you can't move and stuff like that. And when these things break, you've got to fix them. And if you don't fix them, sometimes things just can't happen at all. The warhead, the torpedo's broken here. So just a wetsuit leaks. You got a wetsuit fault. So stuff is just going to go wrong, and you just got to constantly kind of use your engineering skill and figure out how to fix it. Now, these forward positioning cards, basically, these are the different conditions that the scenario starts with, some of them being better than others. And I think that represents like how close you can get to the harbor and all those kinds of things as you're kind of setting up your different mission. Now, the 2 things we have left to look at, these are a smaller deck of cards. So these are roughly half size, I think. And they are 3 different things that they represent. The first here that we'll take a look at is the harbor defenses. So when we saw the map, and I'll put it up again, you can see on the right side of the map, there's a list and kind of a row of spaces where the kind of the core or generic harbor defenses go. And then as the harbor defenses level up, and I'll show a close-up on these as well, those systems are going to improve and make it harder. So the generic searchlights, here's level 1 searchlights. These are going to be better than those generic searchlights. They're more likely to find you. It just kind of represents that there's more of them. Shore-based mortar, which doesn't exist in the base game, gets added. So basically you can have mortars kind of dropping down on your SLCs too. So patrol craft, there's more of them and they're better. Underwater dive teams, so they can send frogmen after you to hunt you down and stuff like that. So just all kinds of really cool, well, I mean, not cool, it's not the right word for it, but fascinating kind of defense system mechanisms that the Allies put in place to try to stop these frogmen attacks. This, I'm not going to say too much about this because I think we'll kind of see it as we get into the play of the game, but this is the alert system. And this is, I think, a really clever mechanic where you're going to pick a card and it's going to have a number on it. And the system itself has a certain number from 1 to 12. And if you draw that number or higher, that means it triggers the alert system and the defenses are going to take some kind of an action. If it's lower, that means you didn't trigger the alert system. So here's a 2. That's a pretty safe one. It didn't trigger the alert system and you're probably going to be able to continue on without problem. So for example, if you go by the searchlight and the searchlight has an activation mechanism of 11, or maybe it's 10 if you're submerged, 11 if you're submerged, and 10 if you're not. And then you draw 7, that means it wouldn't find you. If you draw a 10 or greater and the activation rating was a 10, that means the alert system is gone and that system finds you and now you're detected and you drop a detection marker onto your SLC and things get a lot harder once they get detected. So I think it's going to be really fun. I think there's a lot of tension there where you're going to be trying to sneaking. I mean, that whole subversive kind of sleuthing type of nature of this game, I think, is a big part of it as well. Now, this is really cool. These are all of the operator cards, and there are a lot of them. There's 2 different kinds, and I'll show a close-up again here. There's some that don't have any names on them, and this says basically you can create your own names and put your own people in there and stuff like that, so you can put your pets and family members in here and just kind of take action with them if you would like. These, unfortunately, can't be used for, well, not unfortunately, but these can't be used for the custom campaign game, but that's not a big deal. Then these are the actual historical frogmen counters and teams that were used. And so you basically have the names and the actual photos of the frogmen that were in there. And then as we can see on the bottom half of these, certain of these have special abilities. So this one here, Birindelli and Pacciagini awards 1 victory point at the end of a mission if captured. So you still kind of get a victory point if you're captured. +1 to escape. So they were a little bit more elusive than some of the other frogmen teams. Not all of them have these action points. +1 on repair. So Bertozzi and Lazzari were good, basically mechanics and could fix it up. So a lot of these crews have their own special abilities, and these come to play in the historical missions and the historical campaign as well. For the custom campaign, you actually don't use those abilities. You have to level up your crew's abilities in order to be able to make them better, which makes me think, I wonder how that's going to happen, because to be honest, I feel like the chances of survival when you look at the historical missions and stuff like that, they're not the greatest. These guys were captured and killed quite a bit. So I'm not sure how many of our crews are going to kind of make it through the campaign all that well. So we'll see. And that is the way you can immediately lose the custom campaign game if you run out of these frogmen crews. And I think there are, I want to say 27 of them, 21 of them maybe, of these custom ones. Certain ones you can't use in the custom campaign. If they have this marker here, you can't use them. So I think there's 21 and 9 missions. We need 27. So that would be, we can afford to lose 6. So maybe we'll make it through. We'll see. But anyway, that's it. We're to the end. You got an empty box now. That's the components and kind of a brief overlook of this game. Quite excited to give it a try. I think the storytelling potential of this game is exciting, and I like the idea of the custom campaign because I feel like that's going to add a lot of agency to the game in terms of what technologies you're going to try to develop, what skills you're going to try to develop. You know, it creates that whole tension between short-term success and the survivability of your crews, right? So for example, if we're going to go in and try to take out a particular warship to get 10 victory points, that could be great, but if we lose that crew and they're one of our better crews, do we want to risk that? So I think once you start kind of looking at that custom campaign level, I think that's where the game really probably has a lot more decision-making components to it. So I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing how that layer of the game enhances and magnifies the gameplay. That brings us to the end. If you've enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new, please consider subscribing and let me know what you think. And I'm excited to get going on this. The first episode should be, we might need to do an overview episode for the first one, but that'll be coming up at Submarine Monday time at its regular time. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great day.